Hand traps have been the go-to cards, the staple cards, the cards that everyone says is a must-have in your main deck since Maxi's inception in the Storm of Ragnarok set way back in 2011. And while there are still some hand traps that are really effective in this current meta, don't worry ladies and gentlemen, I won't leave you hanging, I will go over them. Hand traps are becoming more and more of a bust. Those same hand traps that were used to stymie your opponent, well, decks have evolved to be more fluid, playing against those disruptions, and ultimately, you playing hand traps is costing you games. New concepts and new lines of thinking has ultimately rendered hand traps or the thought process of old hand traps practically useless. But don't worry ladies and gentlemen, in this video not only will I be able to get you back to that winning streak, I'll be able to explain to you why hand traps just aren't as good as they used to be. I'm TheCaliEffect, and if you guys want to see more videos like this, then make sure you destroy that subscribe button. But also be sure to hit that notification bell because, well, we just too strong. So without further ado, I present to you the clickbait title, Why Hand Traps Are Garbage in This Yu-Gi-Oh card game. Okay, so before we deep dive into the professor's lecture, I'm the professor, that is me, Professor Cali. I just wanted to say that, of course, my line of thinking about hand traps isn't absolute. I love to talk about Yu-Gi-Oh! And I love to bring new theories to the card game. I would also like if you guys post down below to the description if you have anything to add to this or if you're completely against it. I love to see you guys' opinions. It helps us as players grow and it makes us way better for the competition. So the current line of playing hand traps is quite remedial. No, I don't mean it like that. You guys are glue eaters still, but okay, whatever. Players will play anywhere between 3 to 10 generic hand traps because it hits all of the bases, it hits the best decks of the format, and you have room to do it. Well, I have to say, you're somewhat true. Being able to play these additional hand traps to stymie the opponent when your strategy calls for it is an excellent idea. I like to take Solomon Greats for example because most of the entire Solomon Great strategy is about 25 to 28 cards, and I mean literally maxing out everything you possibly can and playing the side engine cards for the particular deck. Solomon Great also has synergy with the most generic hand trap in Yu-Gi-Oh! Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring because it is a level 3 fire monster. You can easily recur with Solomon Great's Sunlight Wolf for an additional form of negation, and in a pinch, if you really needed to, you could normal summon Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring and use it for an XC play to your Solomon Great Mirage Stalio to be able to further your strategy. I have no problems with decks like that using hand traps, but here is where the problem comes from, where a lot of players just fail to realize and why it is costing you games. Let's take, for example, a strategy that isn't Solomon Great or doesn't have the structure of Solomon Great. Any strategy, seriously, you can pick almost any strategy from this list that needs more than 25 to 28 cards to operate. A lot of times players will take out some of those key component cards to put in a hand trap, and that brings a various amount of factors. First, not only does your hand trap doesn't synergize well with your strategy, you are taking out cards that can make your strategy more consistent or more robust against some of the other decks to make a disruption against your opponent's deck. Now, this disruption can be really good, but more oftentimes when we're talking about genericy, I'm just gonna go ahead and shoot a blank in the dark and saying you're playing Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. This card is actually really easy to play around, and against some of the higher levels of competition, some of the better decks of the format, it just literally does not affect them. Now, there are plenty of times where if you can Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring your opponent at that most critical time, you can scrape that win together. But then I feel that there are more times where that Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring just sits meaningless in your hand and doesn't do anything. It kind of just stops a mediocre disruption your opponent's smartfully chain blocks, or even better, they actually built their deck to combat cards like Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, and they continue to play Yu-Gi-Oh! While you have one less card in your hand. So while not only did you make your deck less consistent and you lost a card out of your hand in the process, a lot of times you didn't even stop your opponent from playing Yu-Gi-Oh! It did not end their turn, it did not shut them down because their strategy was way more prepared. Not to mention top decking a card like Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring that has no synergy with your strategy is not strong at all. It's like the opposite of strong, it's too weak. The next biggest problem with hand traps is actually just revisiting what I was talking about. A lot of the generic hand traps, most of the generic hand traps that people main only stop one thing, and that is the genuine problem with cards like Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. I apologize, I'm picking on that card a lot, but I mean, it's the thumbnail, so I have to talk about it the most, right? Is there a rule against that? Do I have to talk about it, right, Bert? Yeah, I do? Okay, cool. Cards like Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring are the worst cards to have in a situation where your opponent has another method to do exactly what you were trying to stop. Let's take, for example, you have that same said Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring and you're playing against the Orcus strategy. Now pause me if you guys have felt this happen to you before, because I've seen it happen over and over and over again. Your opponent normal summons Scrap Recycler to their side of the field and you think this is the best opportunity to Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. In actuality, the best opportunity is to use it on the Harp Horror. We can even talk about that scenario in a second. You Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring that Scrap Recycler, only to watch your opponent discard an Orcus card and then go full Orcus combo still. Let's go back a little bit even more. We can even say you Ash Blossom the correct card. Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring the Orcus Harp Horror prevents them from special summoning monsters or the Orcus monster to their side of the field. And then they just follow up by special summoning an Orcus monster to their side of the field. There are too many times, too many cards, in so many ways your opponent just completely avoids Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring in cards like that are hard once per turns. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen, you guys happen to pack 3, so let's go ahead and start talking about that right now. I like to think of myself as a really good player, but I also like to think of myself as a better deck builder than a player. Now let me tell you guys a little bit about the rules of deck building and to how to make your decks consistent. If you guys actually go look at any of my deck profiles, you can see a normal flow. Typically, I don't play 3 of any card I want to see 2 copies of. Like, if you can't deal with 2 copies of said card in your hand, then you probably shouldn't play 3 copies of the card. People are playing Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring in max numbers. They're playing them in 3s, and then they're following up with 3s of another card that is a hard once per turn, and then 3s of another card that is hard once per turn. And let's not talk about the cards that you guys are playing in your main strategy, the cards you kind of have to play at 3 because you need to see them, that are hard once per turns, which ultimately gives you a hand where you open something like, I don't know, double Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, double Thanos, and then that one card that just won't save your life. It happens to all of us, ladies and gentlemen, where you open those hard once per turn cards and they just suck. With hand traps, it's a little different because not only are they useless in every other aspect of the game, you have to hold them in your hand and then hope that your opponent doesn't have an optimal hand. Just hope that they literally play multiple hand traps too and open them as well, and hope that those are hard once per turns. So you guys aren't even playing Yu-Gi-Oh! You guys are playing who can hand trap each other better because you guys decided to play bad cards instead of just playing cards to further your strategy to out the hand trap. Now, I have been saying this before the meta shift, but I'm not gonna say that I'm the only person that has been thinking this way. If we go and look at some of the top decks of any event within the past month, you can see that these players are starting to play hand traps less and less. A lot of builds don't play hand traps at all. Why? Well, because players are starting to realize that, hey, I can hand trap my opponent, I can disrupt them, but really, what does that do against an ultra consistent deck? And the way that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is moving, strategies are just getting more and more consistent. They're not getting more powerful. You can't tell me that Orcus right now is as powerful as Goki Extra Link, but Orcus right now is probably a little bit more consistent and resilient to hand traps than Goki Extra Link. With that being said, there is a state of flux. There are some still really powerful hand traps in this meta. I guess I could talk about them with you guys. If you guys haven't been noticing the theme, the hand traps that I feel aren't as great are the hard once per turn hand traps, meaning cards that you can activate multiple times in one turn are really good. Cards like DD Crow not only address the entire meta, it literally hits every single meta deck right now, it also has an opportunity to banish your opponent's pivotal card when they need it most. Infinite Impermanence still stays at one of the best hand traps currently because not only can you activate multiple copies after the first one is resolved, it's also a great going first card and can't really be interrupted. Like seriously, try using a Call by the Grave on an Infinite Impermanence. The next type of hand traps that are really good right now are cards that completely lock your opponent out for the entirety of the turn. Artifact Lancey is really good because it prevents your opponent from banishing cards throughout the duration of the turn, which means no matter how many extenders you have, if your main focus is to banish cards, you're not playing Yu-Gi-Oh! That particular turn. Same thing follows up with Chaos Hunter not only being a body, but being the exact same thing, and cards like Artifact Scythe, while isn't necessarily a hand trap, does prevent your opponent from playing Yu-Gi-Oh! If they're playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Like seriously, nobody wants to play Mystic Mind Burn, jump off a bridge if you do, and bleed slowly. Now there are a few cards that do break this rule. Asphalt and Joyous Spring ironically can break this rule depending on which strategy you play it in. I just would really like for you to have another use than, oh, it's a negate! Nibiru is an interesting choice as well because, I mean, it doesn't necessarily prevent your opponent from doing anything, but getting rid of their entire board after they summon 5 times currently is not really easy to get over. Hand traps can be essential. They can be game winners against certain matchups. So where do you put cards that are matchup specific? The side deck, oh my god. Instead of playing hand traps that make your deck a little less consistent, don't always hit every single matchup across the board, and sometimes are just dead, they should be regulated to the sideboard where they are amazing against in certain matchups. I can tell you that that one cheeky Ash Blossom in Joyous Spring in that particular matchup may have won you the game, but in game 2 or 3, it's better to have it in your side deck than in your main deck and just fell against some of the strategies that just bypass cards like that all in general. I think ultimately, once you change your mindset about hand traps, trying to shove them in any available strategy because they good, then you genuinely start to see the art of deck building, why certain strategies don't use hand traps, why a certain strategy would just be better without hand traps, and what strategies can literally say, I don't care what hand traps you're playing, I'm gonna play Yu-Gi-Oh! And I'm going to break boards. Well, that's pretty much it for my convenient 10-minute rant that allowed me to put advertisements in the middle. I really hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, go ahead and post down below what should I talk about next. Maybe the art of deck building, maybe some other concepts that players are thinking about, or maybe what is going on in the TheCaliEffect's big brain. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and give it a like, and if you really did, consider joining our Patreon. We have so many awesome rewards. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe again, but most of all, enjoy. I hope you guys are having a great day, like I am.